Okay. All right, we might make a start. There's a few downstairs finishing off their meals, but we should really get going. So welcome everyone to the June 2023 meeting of the Space Association of Australia. My name is Michael Abdilla. I'm the Vice President of the Space Association. But as of a week ago, I became the acting president. I will explain that a little bit later in the evening. Am I doing okay? Okay. Okay. So this is what our plan is for tonight. We'll start off with our Space Association news segment with myself. At about 7:15, we will have the feature for tonight, which is the part 2 of the interview with Skylab II astronaut Joe Kerwin. And that interview goes for about an hour and 8 minutes or thereabouts, hour and 10 minutes. So what we might do is if we can find an appropriate time to stop and have a bit of a break, stretch break, that might be a good thing to do. As fascinating as Joe Kerwin is, sitting here on a cold winter's night can be a bit hard sometimes. When that is complete, we will have a planetary and space science presentation from Andrew Rennie. And then we aim to finish at about 9 o'clock, but my guess is that as per usual, we will probably go slightly over that, but that's okay. We're all having a good time, hopefully. So again, thanks for showing up, and thanks to our new people here at the Golden Gate Hotel. Welcome. So our last meeting in May, we held our annual general meeting. And I'd like to congratulate the following members who were appointed to the committee. Peter Aylward as president, Michael Abdilla, myself as vice president, John Coleman, secretary, Tim Franken, treasurer, Len Halprin, Angelo De Grazia, Naomi Cooper, and Shane Usher, who's sitting back there. He's one of our new committee members. Thank you so much for joining our team. And Julian Timmers, who I believe is online. He lives in Western Australia, and he is also a new member of the committee. So thank you to those people. Now, the first meeting of the committee we've held, and the top item of discussion was the future of the Space Association of Australia, what we've been referring to as SAA 2.0. We've been discussing these issues with regard to succession planning, with I suppose burnout of people on the committee, and basically future planning of the association for a while now. And the committee is looking at scaling back some of the activities of the association. And we'll begin by probably reducing the frequency of these formal monthly public meetings. That's kind of the conclusion we've come to, that would be the first step that we would take. And what the committee is considering is having an initial focus by trialing some kind of regular social gathering each month over a meal, but without any sort of formal structure, without any formal presentations or so on. Now, that's not to say that we'll never do that again. But in the interim period, while we sort of work out how things are progressing and what we think we'll do, that's kind of the plan. So the first of these is in fact planned for our next meeting on July 24th. We've decided to make that our first sort of social gathering only. So effectively, it's like what we were doing downstairs before this meeting, and we'll hang out for a while and, have some conversation, talk about space and other things, but without the need to have a kind of a formal structure or a presentation or whatever. Now, what might grow out of that, we don't know. We're open to seeing what happens. And perhaps if we find the right kind of venue, we might be able to have sort of spontaneous presentations, or people might want to get up and say something in particular about the latest news or events or something like that. So that's where we're headed. And the venue hasn't been decided for the next meeting. It may not be here. It may be here, but it may not be here. And the idea is that we'd like to trial that and see how that goes. And in the meantime, the committee will continue to meet and decide on those future directions and what we're going to do going forward. So that's kind of where we're at with our deliberations for the future. So if we stick to our fourth Monday of the month formula, which we have done for, I don't know, 30 years or some amount of time, these would be the notional meeting dates for the remainder of the year. As I said, we've already designated next month to be a social gathering, and then the dates are as follows, and I've just put to be confirmed beside them so that we can, as I say, the venue's not decided, the format's not fully decided, except for next month. So they're the sort of planned meetings for the rest of the year. Remembering that our December 18 is not the fourth Monday, because the fourth Monday is usually very close to Christmas and New Year and blah, blah, blah. And so we usually do it on the second Monday or something like that. Now, one of the other things that's happened since the AGM last month is that our president, Peter Aylward, has resigned from the committee and from his role as president. And that's essentially as a result of some health issues that he has. And yeah, so that's been announced to our membership, but we're announcing it here to the public meeting. So I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the committee and the membership of the Space Association to publicly express our gratitude for Peter's dedicated service to the association over many years in many roles. And he's been involved for over 30 years. And I guess in particular for his leadership as president since 2014. Those of you who know Pete know that he's passionate, committed, and creative. And his many contributions have been, the driving force in shaping our success and growth over the last 10 years or so. So tonight, as we mentioned, the feature is part 2 of our exclusive interview with Skylab II astronaut, Joseph Kerwin. And this is one of those things that Peter was responsible for arranging and organising and actually doing, in association with some of our friends in the Canberra space tracking community. Unfortunately, Peter couldn't be with us tonight to present his own, his work, but he has recorded a little video message, and he wants me to play that, so I'll do that now.
Hi everybody, it's Peter, the former president of the Space Association. As you may or may not know, I've stood down from the presidency, and Michael Abdilla, vice president, is taking over in the interim. I just want you to know, you probably heard I've been dealing with some health issues. As a result, I'm unable to continue involvement in the Space Association. I just want to say thank you to all of you and for your participation, and particularly the committee and the people that have been involved in the presentations and organising the special events we've had. We've had some great events, various Apollo 50th anniversaries events, lectures with Engineers Australia and Royal Aeronautical Society. So we've done some wonderful things, some happy things. I'm not sure what's going to continue on with the association itself as far as meetings are concerned. I think at this stage, this is the final public meeting we're going to be having, although I believe there's going to be like a social meetings, dinners and so forth, once a month to keep people in contact with each other. So I think that'll be wonderful. Once again, have a great night and enjoy the rest of the evening. I think we're now going to look at the final third part of episode of an interview that I conducted with Joe Kerwin, this being the 50th anniversary of his Skylab II mission. The second episode we played last month at the meeting. The first episode deals with pre-Skylab and his early career testing and working at NASA, including quite a strong involvement in Apollo 13. We've got that on our Space Association website, YouTube channel. So if you go to Space Association, space.asn.au website, follow the link to the YouTube channel, you'll see that there. Along with all the stuff we've done over the years, including the Footsteps to the Moon Apollo series, which we conducted between looking at 68 all the way up to Apollo 17, which I thought was fantastic. All right, enjoy the rest of the evening. Enjoy Joe, and good luck with the Space Association. Thanks.
Okay, so just to recap the story so far, to put it in context. So Joe Kerwin was born in 1932, so he's 91 years old. And obviously his claim to fame in this context is as astronaut and physician who served as the science pilot on Skylab II, which was the first crewed mission of the Skylab program. He received his degree in 1957. He was a captain in the Navy Medical Corps, commissioned in 1958. Earned his flight surgeon's wings in 1962. And selected as a scientist astronaut in Group 4 in 1965. And you can see there on the right-hand side, the Group 4 astronauts. From the back is Owen Garriott, and Edward Gibson on the right. And in the front row is Frank Michel, Harrison Schmidt, and Joe Kerwin himself. And someone that wasn't present for that photograph is Dwayne Graveline, who was also one of the Group 4 astronauts. So only those astronauts with their names emboldened actually flew into space. The others didn't actually get a mission. He logged 4,500 hours of flying time. So again, the story so far: on May 14, 1973, the uncrewed Skylab I mission was launched, effectively a space station, but it sustained damage shortly after liftoff. One of the Skylab's solar arrays was torn off and the other didn't open. And a sun shield designed to keep the space station cool was also torn away. And so the inside of the space station was getting very, very warm, as high as 54 degrees Celsius. So in an effort to save the space station, Kerwin, along with his commander Charles Conrad and Paul Weitz, were launched on May 25th, 1973, from Cape Kennedy to rendezvous with Skylab. So Kerwin was involved in repairing the damaged spacecraft, but also as the first physician in space to participate in a US space flight, he monitored the physical effects, particularly of weightlessness, on the crew. And the astronauts successfully completed their mission and returned to Earth on June 22nd. So today is June the 26th, 4 days ago, 50 years ago, they returned. So after Skylab, Kerwin worked at the astronaut office at JSC in Houston, Texas. From 1982 to 83, he was a NASA senior science representative in Australia. And from 1983 to 87, he was director of space and life sciences at the Johnson Space Centre. He speaks very fondly of his time in Australia. Joe Kerwin was also in charge of a team that investigated the cause of death of the 7 astronauts killed in the 1986 Challenger disaster. He left NASA in 1987 to work for Lockheed, and he managed several projects in relation to the International Space Station. In 1997, he became president of Krug Life Sciences that provided medical services. And Krug was bought by Wiley Laboratories, where he became a senior vice president. And Joe retired in 2004. Okay, so tonight we're looking at the part 2 is looking at life on Skylab, his post-NASA career, his time in Australia, and Joe's thoughts on space in 2023. Yep.
A diagram of the solar panel stuck down of the place. Yeah, the solar observatory has an arrow there, intersection, blah, blah, blah. We came out of the airlock, and the airlock isn't shown here, but it's back on the other side, and made our way around to this, the tip of the S4B workshop. And below that, where that presumably is Pete is standing, you couldn't get there by yourself because there was no way to get there. So staying back 20 feet away, we set out the 25-foot pole, put the limb lopper on the end of it, brought the ropes back where we could handle them. And I had the thing over my shoulder and Pete was hanging onto my legs, but that was not enough stability to keep me from moving. And every time I moved the gosh darn 20-foot pole, my body would move in the opposite direction. And we did that for the whole first daytime pass and could not get the jaws where we needed them on that aluminum strap. So night came and we packed it in for a while, enjoyed the view over the South Atlantic, talked it over, and at sunrise, we found a U-boat on the surface of the workshop near one of the stanchions. And I had a spare tether in my pocket. So I got out the tether, connected it to the U-boat, strung it to my suit, strung it through the U-boat and back to my suit, tightened it with me standing there. And then I was standing in it with a 3-point stance, and I was very stable, very happy. And with Pete just helping me with the fine detail. Now you're a little bit too far. Come back an inch, Joe. Now you got it. We got that thing on in 2 or 3 minutes, pulled the rope to tighten it, but not all the way. We didn't want to cut it yet. And then Pete used the pole as a handrail to go down amongst the sharp edges to the base of the solar panel, carrying a third rope with a connector on the end. He got as far down as he could, then he attached the end of the rope to the base of the solar panel. This makes it look as if he got a good 5 or 6 feet. I don't think he actually got quite that far, but and then I tightened that around an upright at the back end, so that it was lying pretty closely along the surface. And then both of us crawled under and got the rope over our shoulders, and then we stood up. And as we stood up, we were exerting tension on the solar panel and tension on that frozen hinge. They had told us that if we got about 100 pounds of tension, it would probably come loose. And I can verify the truth of that, because suddenly it sort of went crack. I didn't really hear it, but it felt that way. And we both went ass over tea kettle into outer space, turned around, followed our umbilicals back till we could hang on to something, and turned and looked, and that solar panel was all the way up.
Oh, wow.
90 degrees up. It just came in a couple of minutes.
And
you see the little panels inside starting to warm in the sun and pull out. And about that time, we got acquisition of signal over, I don't remember which ground station it was. And we heard the joyous, "We've got amps, flight."
That's magnificent.
So that was the high point of the mission. We didn't know if we could do it or not, if it was doable or not. It turned out everything they said would happen a certain way happened that way, and it was a good plan and it worked. And gave us the rest of the day off.
Fantastic. I just want to take you back slightly, Joe, but before you launched, actually, what was your feeling? Did you feel like, oh my goodness, my mission is not going to happen because of all the problems, we're never going to get it done, we're never going to be able to solve this issue? Or was it jump in and get on with it?
For the first day or so, there were a lot of worries. Of course, we stayed away from reading newspaper headlines, which helps a lot. But as soon as we got back to Houston and then to Huntsville and into the welter of things that were happening and talking to all the people, we realized that there was a great effort going on, and that the plan was we were going to launch, and that we were probably going to launch in 10 days because they had a sort of arbitrary time there, but below which our attitude control propellant on Skylab, which was just nitrogen gas, would begin to run low. And so they needed to get us up there about 10 days. We could only launch at 5-day intervals because of the orbit. And so it was 5 days, 10 days, 15 days, or maybe give it up. They made it in 10 days. And I'd say from day 2 on, when everybody was rolling up their sleeves and producing ideas and results, we had a good feeling that we were going to make it, and we launched and as a fairly confident crew. And we were laying on our backs waiting for the countdown clock to go, and Pete said, we need to say something to help the ground people out and make them happy. What do we say? And we talked about it for a little bit, and then launch came, and Pete said, Houston, Skylab, clear the tower, we fix anything. And,
fantastic.
Just clear and simple, Pete and his guys were going to go up there and fix it. Don't worry about it.
That's fantastic. So obviously, Joe, that was your first and only space flight. What was your feelings lying on the pad with all that about to happen? You've never been in space before. You've never experienced a launch before. Were you nervous? Were you excited? Were you everything?
Excited. I mean, this was my ticket to space. There probably wouldn't be another one, at least not until the shuttle launched. I didn't want to wait that long. So the excitement overwhelmed any anxiety that I might have about whether the booster was going to work properly. A lot of other guys had already flown in Saturns, so we knew what to expect. We had an experienced guy in the left-hand seat with his hand on the abort mechanism in case we needed it. And no, we were pretty confident, and the launch was very smooth. The rendezvous was smooth. Finding the nav stars was pretty easy, and the whole thing. And with all the things we had to think about, and all the excitement and the problem getting up to Skylab and then doing whatever we needed to do, none of us got significantly motion sick, and that was a blessing because we had that very busy first day. We had the transmission of all the stuff back home and the talking about it so that everybody had a plan. We had the problem with the inability to dock when we attempted, first thing we did after looking around was to go in and do a soft dock, just the capture latches, not the big ones. And we had a bite of lunch and talked to Houston and decided to try the EVA to pull up that piece of aluminum foil with direct action. So we tried that, Paul. We, donned our suits, opened the hatch after letting the air out. Pete got out there. Paul White's got out there with a sort of shepherd's crook thing on a 5-foot pole, tried to pry it up. And when he gave it a mighty pull, the two spacecraft started coming together. And it didn't work. It stuck too tight. But we did that, terminated that, got back to pressure, got out of our helmets and gloves, went around to dock, and the capture latches now would not work, and we couldn't dock. And the thing was wired in such a way that if you couldn't get the capture latches to fire, the main latches weren't going to go. There was a backup procedure for that, and I remembered very clearly a few months before launch when we were looking at some final training items, and the trainer, Jake Smith, our trainer, said, "You guys haven't looked at the second backup method for docking. You'll never use it, but why don't I show it to you?" And good thing he did, because you had to depressurize the cabin, open the forward hatch, go up there into the docking mechanism and know which wires to cut and cut them, and then reverse all that, and then a couple more wires down in the right-hand equipment bay. And then you were set to go, because that connection, the interconnection between the capture latches and the main latches had been cut. So Pete lined up, got it in, kept the jets firing, and in 8 seconds, the main latches all suddenly latched, and we were staying around. That hadn't worked. That hadn't worked. We might have had to come home.
Oh my goodness!
Nothing
All
was
that
gonna-
preparation, yeah.
Lord love us.
That's-
But so that was the first great high of our Skylab adventure. Was solidly docked. We're here. It's 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. We've had a long day. Let's grab a sandwich and go to sleep in a command module.
Fantastic, right? Because of course you hadn't at that stage opened the laboratory, which I believe was rather hot and uncomfortable.
Yeah, but we were in the command module, which was quite cool.
Yes, yes, that's
The
right.
next morning, we very carefully, analyzed some of the air that was in the Skylab for contaminants. Found that it didn't exist. We were okay to go in. We opened up and went in. The docking adapter was also quite cool. It was the workshop that was 130 degrees. So Pete and Paul knew what to do to get the parasol deployed, and they carried it down. And I watched them from the command module, from the side window. You could spot right down that side of the workshop, and watch the pole coming out. Watched it spread and sort of go like that. Watched them pull it back, and they did a great job. And the temperature started coming down. And Houston said, "You guys want to take the rest of the day off, or just sort of keep working?" And Pete said, "We'll keep working. Well, when we get hot, we'll just go back to the command module and have a drink." And so we got a few things done. And a couple of days later, it was down in the high 80s, and we were off and running.
That's fantastic. So this image, Joe, is I believe a TV image. I think it's from the command module, looking down the laboratory, just at the commencement of that parasol
That's
deployment.
right.
You can
Yeah,
see the gold.
photograph.
Yeah. Fantastic. Oh, this is going back a little bit. This is when you and
That's the
Pete
hardest
were...
concept of the deployment, which I've already described.
Yes, yeah,
And,
yeah.
it's a little bit dramatic. There's some solar panel out there that really shouldn't be in the picture, but that's
Right.
all right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
This is just a picture of later on in the flight, once all of your dramatic work had commenced, and I think you said once the shade panel was deployed, the temperature became much more manageable and comfortable for you. So
you can see us. We just had summer clothes on, and that's all we needed. This was about day 8. We had some time off on that day, and we said, let's show them what it's like up here at Skylab. It's so big. It's so much fun to do acrobatics and bounce around it. And Pete was a race car driver and a big fan of races. And the Indianapolis 500 was coming up within a day or two. So he said, we'll do the Skylab 500 and we'll run around the lockers. And we did sort of. We sort of bounced from locker to locker. You didn't really get enough centrifugal force to actually run. But look how big that place is and how much fun. It's never been a single module for people in space as big as Skylab was.
right.
So Joe, what was it like when you got inside Skylab? Did it feel any different to what you expected, having had the high temperatures and everything that had gone on?
Well, we didn't see much damage. There were some of the food items. A few of the food items had to be thrown away. The ketchup, for example, had come out from its little packages, but most of the food was okay. The size of this weightless area was new to everybody, including us, and we had a fireman's pole, as they called it, an aluminum pole that you could stretch from the hatch at the top there, which is from the airlock, and the waste compartment at the bottom, where the connection is to the oxygen tank, which we used as a trash dump. And that 20-foot long panel fireman's pole, we erected it. we used it for a day or two, and we, played with it some, and then said, we don't need this thing. We can get around so easy that it's just in the way. So we took it down again and put it away, and it was never seen again. The same thing happened at the Apollo telescope mount control panel. Back in the docking adapter was this rather extensive, complicated control panel for all the solar telescopes. And a very nice chair was put there with a buckle and a waist belt and everything. And we, again, used that for a day or two. And then we see, our triangle shoes are much better than this stupid chair. Let's get rid of it. So we packed that off in a corner too. I had a glimpse of another view graph there.
Oh yes, I was just moving a little bit forward. I just wanted to sort of show life on the station. It looks like you there. I don't know. You're pumping your biceps up. What are you doing?
This is one of the medical experiments. If this picture had been taken during training in 1G, we would be lying on our back. But this shows the device coming from off the floor of the crew compartment. You slide your lower body into it. You fasten an airtight strap around your waist, and then your buddy sucks the air gradually out of the lower part, and the difference in pressure pulls blood back into your hips and legs that is normally there but has vamoosed been redistributed into the body in weightlessness. And the reason for this one was basically after a long period in weightlessness with this redistribution of blood, is the crew member going to be unusually susceptible to gravity again, particularly during reentry when he'll be facing 2 or 3 or 4 Gs for a while. So we periodically did this. On the ground, it was a nothing. Up there, it was not a nothing. You'd feel that sensation of lightheadedness. And once or twice, I remember once for me, I started getting lightheaded enough that it was possible that I would faint. As a person, especially an ill person, can faint if they stand up and just aren't doing anything. So we had to cut short a couple of them, and that raised some anxiety about reentry on the longer flights. But it never got any worse. It even got a little better as we got accustomed to it, and that was true right out to the 84-day Skylab 4. So it was an interesting experiment, but it turned out not to be crucial.
So just like, I didn't quite understand that, Joe. So when you were doing this experiment and you had that negative pressure in your lower body, at that stage, sometimes you felt faint, or without?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Interesting.
A little bit faint, as though you were, again, standing up for too long, maybe, didn't have enough fluids, and you get a little lightheaded.
Right.
So your blood pressure drops a little bit, your pulse rate goes up, and PJ monitoring me could see all that taking place. This is a little picture of me drawing Pete's blood. Pete is not looking at his arm. Pete is looking at my head. Pete sat on the ground. He never looked when they were drawing his blood. He didn't like having his blood drawn.
I'm exactly the same.
Yeah. But again, in weightlessness, you're not allowed to pass out, even in the lower body negative pressure machine. There were no other effects whatsoever from having your blood drawn. So once a week, I drew blood and I centrifuged it to separate the cells and the plasma, and then froze it, and we brought it back for analysis.
Well, did you notice anything on orbit or after you got back about the blood characteristics while in orbit? Was it identical or very different?
You lose red cells.
Okay.
The number of the concentration of your red blood cells diminishes because they're not being created anymore. The marrow grows silent. And again, one of the really nice things to find out in Skylab, and it took the 56-day mission to first show this, that it diminishes for a while. And when the number of red cells gets low enough that the oxygenation of the blood is beginning to drop just a little bit, the ability to carry blood, that fact wakes your bone marrow up and you start producing cells again, and you remain in equilibrium at a somewhat lower point. So again, check that one off. It's a real effect of space flight, but it's not a danger for a long duration.
So does that low red blood cell, I don't know much, I don't know anything about medicine, but does that have an effect, a potential effect on immunity or other types of physiological effects?
No, it's as though you had cut yourself badly and lost a pint of blood. Just that. It doesn't have any long-term implications on all the other things that your blood system does, particularly immune type stuff.
And that recovered when you came back to Earth?
Sir?
And when you came back to Earth, things recovered then?
Yes, it recovered fairly quickly. Right. This is just another exercise, acrobatics. You can do things that only the great ones can do at the Olympics. In weightlessness, you can do them yourself. Yeah.
So Joe, here's a big important question. That's a very, very large laboratory with a lot of space. If you were stuck in the middle of that laboratory like you are here, are you stuck there forever? Can you not get back to the handholds or the edge of the laboratory? No.
We tried it out. We put PJ in the middle of the lab. If he started to drift, we would sort of poke him until he was really quite stable there in the middle. And then we said, okay, now make for the wall, any wall. And at first, he tried all this stuff. He tried moving his arms and his legs, didn't work. Then we suggested breathe in and then bend down and breathe out as hard as you can. Be a little rocket. And sure enough, it would take several breaths, but you'd get a noticeable movement out of it, a foot per second. No, not that much, a fraction of a foot per second. But in a few minutes, you'd be safe over at the wall.
Right. So swimming didn't help.
No, swimming didn't help. Orbital mechanics. You were in orbit, and you happened to have a space lab in orbit around you.
Right. That's great. Must have been so much fun.
Yeah.
And so none of the three of you actually got any like space adaptation sickness or any of that sort of thing?
The only thing for this crew was that along about day 7 or 8, we felt really great. And then we realized that we hadn't felt really great on day 1 or 2. A loss of appetite, a little sluggishness. But again, by the end of the first week, that was over. And the other big finding that was a relief from these medical experiments came from the rotating chair. We had a rotating chair, and it had a number of experiments performed on it. But the one we loved to hate was where you spun that chair up to an RPM that had been determined by testing of you on the ground. It was a little different for each crew member, say about 8 RPM. And when you were rotating, then you moved your head in and out of each plane like that. And you did it until you didn't feel good, until you had nausea, as a matter of fact, okay? And if you got to the nausea point, sometimes you went on and threw up. So that was one of the experiments in which we, the flight crew, flew to Pensacola, Florida, where a guy named Dr. Ashton Graybeal was the principal investigator. He was a wonderful scientist and a really neat guy. We explained the problem to him and asked if maybe he could pull the stopping point back from nausea to just malaise. And he said, well, certainly, I understand that. So we did that. And he also excused Pete from doing that experiment on the first flight until we knew more about it. So we'd always have a commander ready to fly home if we got a leak. So he was wonderful. He even let me drive his red roadster around the base while I was at Pensacola.
Fantastic.
Rest his soul, Ashton Graybeal.
Right, fantastic. So I've flicked forward. You would have seen a few images there. There's obviously a lot of medical experiments happening on the station, which you were primarily in charge of. This is an image here. I believe there's a solar observatory on board. Did you operate that, or did you have much to do with that solar observatory?
But everybody worked at the solar observatory.
Oh, right. Okay.
There was enough to do that all three of us were trained to the level of, I don't know, a first-year graduate student, maybe, to understand what was going on enough to know which of the joint observing programs, they had a whole bunch of telescopes there, and seeing in different wavelengths. Some were film, some were electronic, but the film cameras had better finer resolution. That's the word I couldn't find. The others, and so we were all trained, and it was down close to the mission when some of the investigators were talking about whether or not they should really trust the crews to do something like activating this machinery for a flare, because when you go into flare mode, you've got everything going at the maximum rate of speed, and you burn a lot of film in a short time. It better be a real flare. But one of them got up and he said, "Listen, we have trained these gentlemen. We have watched them work. They are going to do a great job for us. Let's just turn them loose." And that had the effect of giving us a pat on the back and making us love those investigators and doing the best we could. We didn't get a flare until about day 22. It was Paul White's at the controls, and he spotted it, and he went into flare mode, and everybody was happy.
That's terrific. So actually on that, obviously being in Earth orbit, you are somewhat protected from radiation, but I think there are concerns about being exposed to that radiation. Did you have like a safe area of the station and you had to go to in case there was a large radiation burst, the solar flare?
We were for almost always beneath the lower of the two Van Allen belts, which is a proton belt. However, there's an area called the South Atlantic Anomaly where that belt comes closer to the atmosphere. And when our orbit went right through the middle of the South Atlantic Anomaly, we would experience, particularly if we were in the dark, we would experience flashes in our eyes that was evidence that the protons were occasionally hitting an atom and making a light.
Wow.
There were never any ill effects on our vision to be found. It wasn't that bad at all.
Wow.
And the total radiation dose was quite low for all the crews because we were safely beneath that lower belt.
Beautiful. Joe, I've got a few sort of life on the station type pictures. Perhaps you could tell us about what's going on here. This is like Pete Conroy with his GAP II.
There's Pete in the shower. And, Pete was always anxious to have us document the pictures in the shower and the waste management compartment and, to show everybody what was going on and how well the equipment was working, which was quite well. We had some minor problems, but generally went well. The shower was sort of an add-on. It wasn't a serious part of the mission. Nobody cared whether we took a shower or not in 28 days, as long as we cleaned ourselves up and changed clothes when we were supposed to. But the shower was nice, and it was a pleasant thing to have. You got a tank of pressurized hot water from the bathroom, from the hot water system, pressurized it up. It probably had a pint of water in it. And then you went in there and you lifted up the shower curtain and locked it into the rotary metal at the top. You had this thing inside and you hosed yourself down with it. Then it was quite nice, but when it stopped, the water didn't go anywhere. It just sort of hung around. And wherever you were concave, you were going to have a bunch of water. You could shake yourself and it would go off and then it would come back. Yeah. We ended up just drying off with 3 or 4 towels and then letting nature and the very dry atmosphere of the workshop dry the rest of it, dry us the rest of the way quite quickly. So it was pleasant. I think all of us used it only once, and we were too busy to use it more often than that, but we were glad we had.
Joe, I did have a good look around, but I could not find a topless photograph of you in the shower, unfortunately. So you must have been a bit shy.
I don't think I saw one either. I did take a shower, however. I promised you, Mom, I took my shower.
Right.
Uh,
So
we
here's
played-
you. Yeah.
We played with the liquids, little basic physics of liquids. We got the liquids by squeezing them out of those accordion flexible liquid dispensers that we had for either water or coffee or a Tang. But you get some water, put it out there, make it into a globe, push it, and it'll rotate. And when it rotates, the equator will get flat, larger, and the poles will sort of pull in. You can inject air, and it goes right in the center of it. And it's just a little high school physics, but nice to see and nice to send pictures of down. School teachers love showing that.
Right.
Here's the bicycle ergometer, the famous bicycle ergometer. It was pretty good. When we did the Skylab medical experiments altitude test a year before flight, Bill Thornton ran that thing at 350 watts. He's a big, strong guy, and burned it out. It failed. So what are we going to do? They said, we have failed the bicycle. So they put a placard on saying, do not run over 250 watts, which was below the 75% output that all of us were supposed to achieve. So it had no operational effect. The big problem when we got up there was strapping ourselves to the seat. You can see the seat in that picture. You can see Pete's bottom. You don't see a restraint belt, but we had one. It was complicated. Went around your lower abdomen and your upper thighs, and you strapped it down to the floor, and it held you on there quite solidly. And the straps across your thighs cut off the circulation to your legs when you started to exercise hard, and you couldn't make it up to 175 or 200 watts where you were supposed to be. And Pete, remember, was trying harder than anybody else to show how good he would be at a long duration flight. He worked so hard that he'd throw a couple PVCs as he was coming off his peak. And the doctors on the ground, who were spring-loaded to the nervous position because this was their mission and it was long duration and nobody knew what was going to happen. And hadn't 3 Russian cosmonauts died after a long duration flight a year ago? Yes, they had. So all that, they got very excited about these innocent PVCs and told Pete that, they told all of us that from now on, we had to exercise only over the United States so they could watch every heartbeat. And Pete couldn't go on the spacewalk to free up the solar panel because of the PVCs. So
what are the PVCs? What's the PVC? What is that?
Oh, excuse me, Dr. Talk. Premature ventricular contractions.
Oh, right.
Little heartbeats that came a little before their time.
Was that ever identified on the ground for Pete or anybody else?
Oh yeah. Anytime you do it, it's not everyone that exercises to high levels, but maybe a third of people who do, including
really?
guys in really great shape, does not mean you have heart disease. Okay, but in weightlessness, you never can tell. So, meanwhile, PJ in particular was working on how to fix the harness so that we could exercise more effectively. And he finally discovered that if you take the harness and roll it up and put it back in the locker where it came from, and just do what Pete is doing, hang onto those handlebars, let your body rotate until it's over the center, the CG of the pedals. We had some towels we put up there later in case we bumped our heads, and you could go right on up to your max without the harness.
That's
So
fantastic.
we made that discovery about the time that we got the call. So Pete, being a shy, anxious, sort of a guy, said, "Get me the center director." And he got the center director, and he explained the situation. And I got on to tell him that Pete was healthy as a horse, and would he please speak to the doctors? So he told the doctors that this was very important and they should not stop Pete from doing his thing. And the doctor said, "Okay, but let him do another bicycle run. And if he's okay on that, then everything's fine." So we did, and it was okay. And that was the end of that, the most exciting problem we had the first 10 days of the flight.
That is wonderful. That's fantastic. So here's you all, looks like you're tucked up in bed. Is that right?
I'm doing the sleep experiment. It's just
okay.
a hood or whatchamacallit, with little electrodes in there, and they recorded brain waves while I was sleeping for maybe 3 or 4 occasions during the flight. I was the selected crew member for that. They didn't find out anything much.
Nothing, no nightmares, no night terrors or
No,
anything?
no nightmares. They can tell when you're dreaming, and they can tell when you're in deep sleep, and they could see that we got a little less sleep than we get on the ground, but not to amount to anything. And it was fun. Just filling in the blanks on that one.
And actually, in a general sense, how was it sleeping in 0G? Was it
was good.
difficult?
Really
was it strange?
It felt a little awkward, and different guys would take different ways to approach that. Here we are on the sleeping pad. There again are elastic straps, at 2 or 3 of them, to hold you down to it, and that helps comfort. There was even a little sort of piece of the blanket that you could slip over your forehead if you wanted to keep your head in that upright position. That wasn't so hot. But again, once you got used to it, you slept normally. Paul Weitz didn't like being in this little sleep compartment so much. He learned how to detach the sleep station from the wall, and several nights he would just go off and search for some different place to sleep, in the workshop, down in the command module. We never knew where Paul was going to be at night, but he got his sleep too.
Like an Easter egg hunt. You have to go and find Paul.
Didn't turn out to be a big problem.
Oh, that's terrific. Fantastic.
I'm waiting for another. Oh yeah, I did do physicals on the guys 2 or 3 times during the flight, and to earn my my doctor's pay. And again, there were no pathological findings. Pete had dislocated a finger earlier when we were playing in the workshop, but it popped right back in. I put a stick and some tape on it to keep it straight for a while, but Pete took that off in a few hours. That and a foreign body in the eye were the only medical problems I had to treat during the mission.
Oh, right.
I did the physicals. They were normal, except that in weightlessness, when you're relaxed, you are really relaxed. Your muscles are very soft, much softer than they are on 1G. That was an interesting finding.
I'm not sure what the next photo is here. So here's you checking heartbeat on Paul by looks.
Checking the heart rate on Paul while he's laughing. He felt great, obviously.
And this is a picture I love of you, Joe. It's well, tell us what's going on here.
It's got my buddy the spacesuit, which is there were foot restraints for each suit in the large area of the workshop, and in between EVAs we would just set them there, and they looked like I don't know, people from a strange planet or something occupying space with us. And I don't think I'm doing anything else of interest. I could not describe in detail what that stuff is between the spacesuit and the ceiling anymore. I can't remember.
I do like your little silver cap you've got on there. Is that a special alien-proof cap that you wear in space?
The hat, I don't even remember that hat.
The silver cap.
We didn't wear hats much
I'm sure. Well,
our
Joe, I really love this picture because the expression on your face, to me, is a person had achieved a goal, satisfied in a great place,
enjoying
and
himself.
it looks, it looked like you're enjoying it. It's a beautiful picture. So, congratulations on that.
We
The job
enjoyed ourselves. I was like that. I will rent that picture out at a very small charge to the first commercial space station for paying passengers.
There you go. All right, it's a deal.
We
I'll be your
went-
manager.
Yeah,
No, that's beautiful. That's
it's
beautiful.
coming.
All right, so I think this picture, Joe, from memory, is actually one of the last pictures you took after you detached from the station to go back to Earth. So how was your feeling when you left that? Obviously, you've done a lot of work to make it habitable and get it sort of to a running situation. So how do you feel when you're departing?
We were happy when we departed because we left the station in good condition for the follow-on cruise, and that's what it was all about. We had another anomaly 2 days before we were supposed to re-enter. We were already packing up used things and putting them in the trash bags that we used, cloth bags, putting them down the trash airlock. The trash airlock was an airlock with an upper door and a lower door to put trash into the evacuated, that is open to vacuum, but screened in oxygen tank of the S4B, screened in so that the trash wouldn't go everywhere. It would, it would descend and be burned up whenever we got rid of Skylab. And it was working fine. But along came the time we were busily stuffing through the stuff, bags of that stuff through, and it got stuck. And there was a bag in there that would not go down. And what were we going to do now? What was the next crew going to do? They had no other way of getting rid of trash. It was a major problem. And again, Pete and Paul just took it into their hands to jiggle and wiggle and back up and push and pull and try everything they could think of. And all of a sudden it went through to probably an hour and a half of really hard work. And Houston suggested, well, try this, try that. Suddenly it went through, and we just had to, write a note to all future residents: do not overstuff the bags. Make sure they are smaller than the compartment. And nobody, to my knowledge, nobody had a problem with them on subsequent flights. So that was our get ready. And then we had a very short sleep duration the night before, but who cares? You're on your way home. And reentry was fine. There were 2 engine burns, one to just get your orbit down from 260 miles to about half of that in order to make a more accurate entry. And the interesting thing about that was, here come these 28-day guys, and they strap into the command module, and they get this 1G burn to get them to a lower orbit. And 2 of us felt that same lightheadedness and almost the beginning of a gray out.
Really?
For a few seconds during that burn. This was a big surprise because 1G burn, what is it? It's nothing, But again, in the situation we were, not accustomed to gravity at all, short on fluids. We'd lost an average of about 8 pounds each. And we knew that already because we had a mass measurement device up there. And so it went down, and then it went back up before the burn was over, but it left us saying, wow, did you feel that? PJ and I both did. Pete did not. We just had a few words between Pete and me about who would push what button if the other guy was not conscious and pushing it during the real reentry. And the real reentry, which was a slower build up to a considerably higher G-force, we felt nothing, conscious and normal the whole way through. So that's just a story with no meaning as far as physiology goes.
So when you say you lost weight, was that basically fluid in your tissues, or was that muscle or bone, or
both fluid and mass? We were not getting enough calories, and that became clear during and after the mission. The second crew got more real calories, by which I mean protein, carbohydrate, and fat, not just sugar. And the third crew got even more, and they exercised more. Bill Thornton built them a treadmill. And in the third crew, we finally approached the kind of equilibrium between diet, exercise, and zero G that is ideal. And on that basis, we said, look, in just 3 short flights, relatively short flights, we think we have already identified and started to conquer the biggest problems we found, which was eat enough and work out all the time. Do that and you'll be safe. And that's what they're doing up there on the space station.
Fantastic. So you're back on Earth. This unlike the other Apollo crews, you stayed in the capsule, I believe, until you got onto the deck of the carrier.
That's right. That's right. We were the first ones to do that. And that's when, as I said, we had Pete crouched at the hatch, waiting for it to be open so that he could step out and say, we're fine, let's go. And indeed, each of us had a flight surgeon to accompany us, just to make sure. And that's Pete, and I was the second, and Paul was the third to come out. And we made our way across the deck, waving to the sailors, and then went down the steps into sick bay, where I threw up in the wastebasket.
Oh.
My problem was that I knew I was the doctor, and I knew that we would be short of fluid when we landed. And I said, I am going to drink a strawberry drink after we get on the water, and that will help to mitigate the loss of fluid, and then I won't pass out on the carrier deck. So I drank it, and we were bobbing along. The waves were not very high, but there we were going like that. And I started getting a little seasick. I said, that was a mistake. I ought not to have done that. But I managed to hold it until we got into sick bay, and then threw up. Shortly thereafter, I had my wife called. They put her through, and I was laying around in sick bay, and I said, I'm doing fine, but I did throw up once. And she said, Joe, Dr. Berry just called, and he said you were the sickest astronaut that he's ever seen, and he wasn't sure whether it was vestibular or cardiovascular. And I said, if he calls back, tell him it was vestibular. And she did. She said, it's vestibular, Chuck. So that was good. We showed the effects of 28 days, but we recovered quickly. We got to go see the president at the summer White House and the Soviet premier, though that's that last picture. And the guys on the ship had made up a couple of little handouts for Nixon to give to Brezhnev when we showed him how far ahead we were in space.
You bet. That's brilliant.
The other thing about that, the other story about that picture is that it was a severe blow to our wonderful flight surgeon, who had strict orders from Dr. Berry and everybody, keep the masks on. You guys are still experiments. We've got 18 days of post-flight data to get from you. Wear the damn masks. So he drives with us to the San Clemente, and we get out of the car and we start walking across a large lawn to where there's a little podium set up, and the president's there and Brezhnev is there, and Pete stops and he says, "I am not wearing a mask in front of the president and Brezhnev. Take them off." He said, "Commander, we took them off." And Chuck just said, "I'm going to get in deep trouble for this," which he did. But of course, he took it all on himself, and nothing happened.
That's
Nobody
wonderful. That is absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Terrific. So I think this is when you got back to.
This is at night at JSC after our flight
Oh, right.
back
Yeah.
from San Diego, and all looking pretty good, especially Pete.
Yeah.
A long duration, unadapted guy. And we were just telling him that it was fine, and the second and third crews should go up there and have a good time.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant. So this is a picture a little bit later on. This is the 20th anniversary of the Apollo 11 lunar landing. Was this in Australia, Joe, or is this?
It might have been.
It was in
It
Australia.
certainly might have been.
Yep.
I don't have a detailed calendar of my activities to refer to,
Right.
but we did visit Australia back then, and had a wonderful time in Australia.
Well, you worked in Australia for a little while,
This is
didn't
when
you?
you were the NASA
So
senior
I tell that
scientific
story
representative.
briefly.
Hmm.
One day around 1980, I got a call from NASA headquarters saying, "Would you like to, we got an opening for the NASA senior scientific representative in Australia, and we'd like you to go. If you want to go, you can bring the family. 2 years." Wow. So I said, I'll check with the family and call you tomorrow. So we got around the dinner table, and I knew that not everybody would want to go, but I told them, "We got a chance to go. It's a chance of a lifetime to go to a different country. We could get you into schools. They approximately speak English." And to my great surprise, all four of them, the three girls and their mother, said, "Let's do it. Let's accept this this chance." The oldest girl was in college. She desperately wanted to get into vet school. She didn't want to do anything or take any time out that would hurt her. So we said, "Go to your advisor." She went to her advisor. Her advisor said, "It would be better to go than not. You will get great experience. Go." So she came back and got into vet school a year early. She never graduated from college. And the same thing was true. The other girl, the youngest girl, was a freshman. She got into an all-girls school, and that was a little tough. They were kind of clannish, and it was a little hard for her to break through and make friendships. But other people helped her. She found a guy with a farm and a horse, and he would let her come and ride the horse a couple times a week. She learned how to drive in Australia.
Oh my goodness.
And so she had a good time too. And the middle girl was the outgoing girl. That was Joanna. She said, "It can be Catholic. That's fine. It can have uniforms. That's fine. It's got to have boys." And Darrell College had all three. So that's where she went, taking the bus and everything. And she was a little weepy on the plane going over because she had left a boyfriend. When we left Australia, she was a little weepy going back because she'd left an Aussie boyfriend behind. So, in between, we had a wonderful time. I traveled quite a bit, and so did the others. We went up the East Coast and into the Coral Sea and down to Tasmania, and made friends, and just had a wonderful 2 years, getting to know people and not doing anything in particular standing to affect the relations between the United States and Australia, fortunately. But the ambassador had a plane, and he went all over the country, and he would take me with him. And in particular, there were some people in Australia at that time, mostly the younger people, the people who didn't remember World War II, who weren't that hot on the Americans, and they were restless about having nuclear weapons on our ships. And they wanted us to tell them whenever a ship came into port in Austria whether or not they had any nuclear weapons. They never said what they were going to do if we said yes. But then said, we're not allowed to tell you that. So there was some of that. But out in Western Australia, we had a little submarine base in a place called Exmouth on the West Coast. They didn't have actual submarines there. It was a submarine, an underwater communications base. And the mayor of Exmouth greeted us. And he also ran the local motel. And I still have the little cup holder that says, visit Exmouth, Australia's #1 nuclear target. Get bombed at so-and-so's hotshot inn. I thought, these are the kind of people we love, and they love us back.
That's great. So when you were living in Australia, were you living in Canberra?
Yes, we were living in Canberra. NASA allowed us to pick out and buy a house. And I think they may have used it for several people that followed us. And so we lived in Canberra. I went to work in Canberra. We would drive up to Sydney every now and then, visit the Opera House, that beautiful thing, and just have a good time in town. We went in the Opera House one afternoon, and the orchestra was in there, and they were rehearsing. And somehow they let us sit high up and watch. And the conductor is doing this. And pretty soon he stops, reaches in his pocket, puts a handkerchief on his head, and keeps on conducting for about another minute. Then he stops and he turned to a particular person and said, "You didn't even notice when I put that handkerchief on my head. I want you to watch me and do what I say. Do what I want you to do." He was instructing the orchestra, and we got a big kick out of it.
That's fantastic. So, Joe, I think the next picture is your command module back on Earth. Obviously, I think it's
could be. It looks very small.
It does, doesn't it?
That small thing gets bigger in weightlessness when you could float around and use every nook and cranny in the place to hang out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, have you been to visit it at all, or often, or? I think it's
I don't even know where it is anymore. I'm not sure which place got the Skylab II command module.
Right, it might be the Smithsonian. I'm not sure. I should have looked it up, but I'll find that out. Yeah,
I know it's not in Houston.
Right,
we have one of the Apollo ones in Houston.
Oh, okay, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you stuck around at NASA for a little while, Joe, and this is a picture of yourself and Catherine Sullivan, I think it is.
Say who?
I think is it Catherine Sullivan?
Is that Kathy Sullivan?
I think
it might be. This is very interesting because I have on my book stand next door her book called Handprints on Hubble, because she made several trips to Hubble during her astronaut career.
Right.
We had a 50th anniversary celebration in Florida 2 weeks ago, and Kathy was there, and I hadn't seen her in a long time, but we had a great time together, and with my daughter Joanna, telling stories about that and about her EVA time, and remembering that she came to me and complained. But she complained with data and did it in a beautiful way about the fact that we had a plan that females had to breathe oxygen before launch for an hour longer than males. And we did that on the basis of Air Force data on nurses and things that seemed to show that they were somewhat more susceptible to the bends if they weren't properly denitrogenated. So she came with the data. She made us look it over. We talked about it with the doctors and others, and I made an executive decision that it really would be smart for us to have the same free breathing procedure for the guys and the girls. Everybody would get along better if we did that. The girls are safe at 3 hours. The guys could go up a little bit to 3 hours. Let's everybody pre-breathe for 3 hours. And so it was done. And so Kathy and I were buddies ever since. And we had
Fantastic.
a good time just 2 weeks ago
That's great.
talking about her career.
That's fantastic. Actually, Joe, I've just looked up. I'm mistaken. It's actually Anna Lee Fisher in this picture. And I believe the background is you stayed around at NASA and were helpful in EVA design and training. Is that right? So this is Anna Lee Fisher.
Oh, that's Anna Lee Fisher. Yeah, yeah. It didn't look like Kathy.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago, but it didn't look like Kathy. That looks more like Anna Lee Fisher.
Yeah. So that's you in the background there. Looks like you're getting ready for.
And it
do
is.
some
That's
training.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was.
Oh, there you
always
go. Look at that. There we go.
go. And that's not Anna Lee Fisher. That's the first lady to fly in space. I think.
Oh no! The label says here it is Anna Lee Fisher.
It's still Anna Lee. Okay.
Yeah,
I thought
yeah,
it was,
yeah.
I thought it was the other girl.
Yeah. So here's a capture
yeah.
here.
Anna Fisher, weightless testing. Okay.
Yeah. So this is indicating you and Anna doing some Hubble service EVA simulation. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, they kept pressing me into service because they had suits that fit me.
Fantastic.
Kerwin suits around. Yeah, that was fun.
So this is, I think, a picture of you in your office in Australia, looking very serious.
Yep. Look at the flag.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Reading the catching up on the paper. Yeah.
Lovely.
I'm not sure what this is. So, this is kind of the present finish of the slides itself, but I guess overall, once again, we'd like to thank you for all of your great assistance. And did you feel like you wanted to continue with a space flying program? Did you want to fly to space again, go on the shuttle, or?
Well, I got back from this vacation / assignment in Australia. It was great fun. It was a great thing for all the family. It didn't particularly advance my progress within NASA, but I didn't care too much about that. And came home. The girls were now a year and a half older, and 2 in high school, 1 in college, about to go into vet school. I had an offer to fly on the Space Lab Life Sciences mission on the shuttle. George, when is that going to launch? Oh, 6 or 7 years from now. George, I've got kids in school and I don't want to be on the go. This is a multilateral, multinational mission. A lot of the experiments are in Europe. I'll be back and forth I don't want to do that for 6 years. I want something closer in. Well, okay. He never talked. So that was it. We put family over flight in that one, and I'm very glad we did because they all turned out great.
That's really good. Well, I mean, I've read a number of books and biographies and things, and they all explain the tremendous load that a space career such as yourself does have. So congratulations on taking that priority for your family. It's really lovely. Yeah.
Some families can tolerate that and do very, very well. One of the people that recently was inducted into the Hall of Fame at this meeting 2 weeks ago was a guy like that, a Georgia farmer's kid who somehow made it into the Air Force Academy and had a wonderful career at NASA and then back in the Air Force. He commanded at Edwards Air Force Base. He became the top man at the Cape Canaveral Kennedy Space Center, and then at another NASA Space Center. really full career. I made Major General, and all of these things involve changes of family. And I said, how in the world did you do it? He said, they just all loved it. They all wanted to do it. So some guys can do that and do it beautifully.
So, yeah. So coming to the end of this now, Joe, we've taken some of your time. We really appreciate it. So what's your general view of the state of space and space exploration in 2023? And what do you think about what's happening and what hopefully might be coming up?
I think it's better than I expected it to be. I had a briefing. We had briefing. Retired astronauts can come back once a year, and the office briefs them on what's going on. I hadn't done that then for about 6 or 7 years. So they are starting to prep for the Artemis missions, the return to the moon. They pointed out that they had, in the year 2000, they had 200 astronauts. The shuttle was flying 8 times a year, and they were coming and going like mad. They're down to 40 astronauts now, and they're seriously understaffed because there's a lot of development, new missions, new procedures, new spacesuits, new everything that those guys have got to get their arms around too, along with the flight controllers and the engineers. And so they're going to have to hire some more troops in a hurry, and those troops are going to have a wonderful time. A new mission with, new thoughts and expectations, and the knowledge that when we go back to the moon and when we stay there, we'll be getting ready for Mars. They can say, maybe I'll still be in the office when that first Mars mission comes along. Probably not, but you can't tell.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's good. The other thing I like is the growth of commercial flights. And I really do believe that this business of sending 1 or 2 or 3 people off for $1 million a piece is just a phase. And before you know it, I mean, in 10 years, we may have a plastic space station up there with tickets that are within the reach of the middle class. And that'll be good too.
Yeah, that'll be nice. Yeah, for sure. Joe, did you see the documentary called "Searching for Scott"? Take it. Bye now.
Adios.
Bye now. Oh, that was excellent, Colin. You still there? No.
Okay. Thank you very much.
A diagram.
I was going to have a break, and I got so enthralled in listening to Joe Kerwin that I forgot all about it. So I hope that's okay. So I think you'll agree that was a terrific interview. Sorry, terrific interview. And he's quite amazing for a 92-year-old, and he can apparently talk the leg off a chair. So
Mike Din's also shared a link about the Apollo 11 20th anniversary with him introducing it. So we'll send that to.
Great.
The chat.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. So just very quickly, if you want to see, there are actually 2 interviews with Joe. There was one interview that spoke about his early career and that kind of thing, and we haven't shown that here at our meetings. And then the interview 2 was the one that you've seen, but that was broken up into 2 parts. So we've seen, effectively interview 2, part 1 and 2, but all 3 parts will be available on the Space Association's YouTube channel. So if you just search up on SAA TV or go to our website, space.asn.au, and follow the link to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to see all 3 of those interviews. And thanks again to Peter for doing a wonderful job in conducting those interviews. Okay, we'll just have a quick break while we set up for Andrew, and then that will close out the evening.
Last time I got about halfway through my presentation, so I'm going to finish that off tonight. And if there is time still, I've got a few new things to raise as well. So he says, trying to work out which way to go. There we are. Okay. In 2021, Juno passed Ganymede, and it did so at about an altitude of about 1,000 kilometers. And that's the closest that any spacecraft has come to Ganymede since the Galileo mission in 2003. Now, the trajectory allowed the Juno cam aboard the Juno spacecraft to take some quite good images, much better than was done with Voyager. Just a bit of background. The Juno mission is gradually, the orbit is changing. The latitude of the perigove, that's the lowest point to Jupiter, is changing. And the first of the moon missions, perigove 34, which is the one we're looking at tonight, was the past Ganymede. And then the next one is Europa. And the one we're really looking forward to are perigoves 57 and 58, which are going to be close to Io. And then after that, there will be no more moon passes. Now, JunoCam is not intended to photograph the moons. It was meant to be looking at the clouds of Jupiter, and it is a citizen science project. One of the findings in going past Ganymede was the magnetic field, and it confirmed that Ganymede does indeed have its own magnetic field, and the question is how and why. And this little movie here shows you the magnetic field and how it is affected or interacts with Jupiter's magnetic field. Remember, Jupiter's magnetic field is enormous. And of course, you can see in that red line the trajectory that Juno took past the moon. All right. It did some mapping of the surface and some remote sensing work and gravitational field measurements and magnetic field measurements in those areas shown here. So the gravity field was analyzed using both Juno and Galileo data and shows that the gravity field is compatible with hydrostatic equilibrium. In other words, that moon is hydrostatically stable and it's not in serious deformation. All right. Now, these are the gravity maps. Milligal, MGAL, is a measure of gravitational field strength, sort of field strength. And the blue passes, or cyane, depending what the color's like up there, is the Galileo flybys, and the Juno flyby is the yellow one. Now, this 0 point on this is the sub-Jupiter point. In other words, because that moon is gravitationally bound, it does not rotate with respect to Jupiter. And so if you were on that moon and you stood at the cross point there, Jupiter would be exactly overhead. It's called the sub-Jupiter point. All right. As a result, they've been able to measure and get some interior modeling of the Ganymede. And in doing this, they assume an ion core density of 5,500 kilograms per cubic meter and a mantle density of 3,300 kilograms per cubic meter. And there are various models on that compared to Titan, which is the moon of Saturn. Now, Ganymede observations by GenoCam on Perijove was published on December last year, and quite a few close-up images, and much better than the Voyager 1 flyby. And they were looking for changes. Had anything changed on the surface? And the answer is no, it has not changed. And the topography derived from GenoCam confirmed a 3-kilometer high dome at Ganymede's subjovian point. In other words, it's stretched out towards Jupiter, and showed it to be elliptical in plan form. So let's go. Here are some of the GenoCam pictures. And the one with the rays on it there is called TOS, and it's a 92-kilometer diameter crater. Here's a comparison in the Phrygia and Tros regions, and GenoCam on the left and Voyager on the right. Now, because they were able to get pictures from GenoCam from different angles, they were able to do a digital elevation map. The digital elevation map is shown on the right-hand side, a GenoCam picture on the left-hand side of the crater Tros. And you might think, looking at, let's move the cursor so you can see what I'm looking at here. You might think some of these slopes are quite steep. After all, it's going down a distance of 1 kilometer. But if you look at the horizontal distance, that's about 25 kilometers. So it's dropping 1 kilometer in 25 kilometers. So it's not, steep. It's, a gradual descent. And that line across here is the line, the transect that they've done across there. So yes, there's quite a, it's still quite impressive, but it's not like standing on Mount Buffalo and looking down 1 kilometer. Okay. This next one is a cylindrical projection. And on the right, we have the digital elevation model. So over here, we have the digital elevation model. And this white spot here is the sub-Jupiter point. And that is raised up by around about 3 kilometers. And it's about 750 by 450 kilometers in size. So that's that raised spot right underneath the thing. And that's a new finding from Juno. Moving on to these maps. And let me sure I got the right one. Yeah. On the left is a Voyager plus Galileo. And on the right is GenoCam. Down here, we have a 2013 geological map. And here is that same map modified with GenoCam data. So this is the Voyager cum Galileo data. And this is adding in some Juno stuff here. And of course, adding in here that raised high point at the sub-Jupiter place point. Okay. They did searches for new features, new as in time, but also new as in not previously discovered. And there's 3 prominent craters that were not evident in the Voyager data. And some of these other things here, we've got some Patera. Now, Patera is a shallow bowl. And here are some of the newly discovered Patera. A few of these were sort of hinted at in the Voyager pictures, but weren't really clear. Now they are. So this camera, which wasn't supposed to do geology on the moon, has turned up some wonderful new things, and there's lots of more to be discovered about that. Now, here's some comparisons between the Voyager and the Juno pictures. I'm just clicking through a few of these. So in all cases, the Juno ones are much better than the Voyager ones. Now, let's go to Mars. And, oh, I can see a wombat. Can you? Okay, some of you might, if you're not familiar with Australian animals, you might call it a pig. And Ingenuity, it's made 51 flights. This little video was made for the 50th anniversary. The 50th flight, that is. So that was for the 50, flight number 50. It's now done 51, but it hasn't flown for quite a few weeks now. And there's one of the pictures downward. There's a downward-looking camera as well as an angle-looking camera, and that's one of the pictures. You can see the helicopter's shadow there. Japan and the United States have signed an agreement for MMX, the Martian Moons Explorer, which is a craft that's going to go out to land on Phobos and pick up samples and bring them back to Earth. And just recently, in addition to this agreement here, where you see Pam Malroy on the left, Australia and Japan have reached an agreement for those samples to land back here in Australia, just as they did with the Hayabusa missions. Now, New Horizons, quite a few years since we've had it, but new papers are being presented, and I'm just going to race through a few of the ones which were presented in March this year. New information about how Arakoth was formed. Remember where Arakoth is. And one of the questions they had was, why, these mounds, why do they look so similar? And the answer is they seem to have been made from similar sized accretion material when they formed. And so we've now got a theory of how Arakoth formed, and the bits that made it up were all pretty much the same size. Whereas the picture on the very left-hand side there might indicate boulders, all sorts of different sizes. Now it appears that no, they're about the same size. Now, polar wander. Has Pluto always been spinning, it's this way actually, the same way? The answer is no. Now, on Earth, of course, our spin axis has changed slightly over the years, but there's a reason why the Earth spins the way it is, and that's to do with the basins and bulges and the balance between those. in the case of Pluto, Sputnik Planitia, this large white area here, the half of the heart, is actually a basin, but underneath this ocean uplift underneath it, and when that formed, that changed the dynamics of Pluto and caused a polar shift. And also Charon has a role to play in that. And oops, I went too far, I think. Yes, and so the pole has changed, and the evidence for it is to do with the size of the mass anomaly that's at Sputnik Planitia. The amount of nitrogen ice filling the basin has also had an influence, and the axial tilt has also had an influence. Let's move on. And so what are the clues that this has actually happened? Well, there are lines where you can see those lines and those lines, and you can see them here in the dichotomy, like here and here. There's evidence in the geology that, yes, the poles have wandered on Pluto. Okay, now the bladed terrain. On Earth, in the Atacama Desert, we have these penitine, I can't say that word, sorry, blocks of ice sticking up along the lines of the wind. And we have the same bladed sort of terrain on Pluto, except the scale is so much bigger, 10 meters versus 50 kilometers on the scale there. Now, where does this occur? Well, the main area is here, but there's been identified other areas where these bladed terrains also occur. They weren't as well imaged as the one that we just showed you. So here's some of the areas where the bladed terrain, this is on the side of Pluto that wasn't well imaged. And again, there's the scientific details I won't go into there. Now, surprisingly, New Horizons has been able to look back at Uranus and Neptune. Okay, they're only dots, but they do show the variability as the planet rotates, and that allows us to work out, okay, what's some of the weather on those two planets. The Hubble Space Telescope has been taking context images and shows that, yes, these planets are changing over time from 2018 to 2021. And combining the New Horizons with the Hubble has a synergistic effect and a much better result by combining the two data. And they're going to continue that into the future. So even though New Horizons is now way out, it can still see a few pixels across these cold ice giants, they're called. Now, Charon, a scientific paper here published on Charon's refractory factory, and they've combined lab experiments with the exospheric modeling to reveal the dynamic Lyman alpha photolysis of plutonium methane. So why is it thing? And again, I'm not going to go into all the details of this. You can look it up in the scientific paper if you want. But Lyman alpha, as ultraviolet light comes, hits the methane, and it causes changes and also movement on the moon, Charon. Okay. New Horizons, as I said, is heading way out, and their hope is that they'll find another Kuiper Belt object where New Horizons might be able to pass, just like it did with Arrakos. No luck yet, but they're still looking. They've still got quite a few years to look. But this is using the Subaru telescope and stacking images to look for changes to see if there's any of those Kuiper Belt objects along the trajectory that New Horizons is traveling. As I say, no luck yet, but you never know. Okay. Oh, and see that object moving there where my cursor is? That's a new Kuiper Belt object detected by the Subaru telescope. All right, now SLIM, Japanese mission to the moon, was going to be launched quite a few months ago, but the H3 failure means that it's going to be until August of this year before they launch it, even though this is on a different vehicle, the H2A, but they want to be sure that the problem is not generic between the two vehicles. That's from Japan. And of course, going up with it is XRISM. And XRISM's going to look at quite a few problems, or enigmas, as they call them. First of all, how did the galaxies assemble? What causes those? What's the chemical makeup overall of the universe? It will be able to explore some of the extremes of space-time, in particular, the area around the black holes. And, sorry, there's one more there. This is double-clicking sometimes, just once. Now, Venus. Remember Magellan went to Venus, had a radar, and searched through. Based on that, we've got this map of Venus. But they've discovered, by looking through the old data, and that's what I knew I was going to bring something. I've got a stack of CDs this high. Every image taken by Magellan on CD-ROM. And I could have made this discovery had I gone through them all and compared before and after. Yeah, okay. Fit the fish that got away. Anyway, there's an active vent on Alta Regio. Now there's a picture. Well, it's a radar. Yeah, okay, it's a look down picture, and then it's made into a 3D by simulation. And here's Mart Mons, and looking at that little area there, this is what we see. And if you compare the top and the bottom, hey, they're different. There's a new flow here. And that was hidden in the data from 1992 or thereabouts, I think it was. And hidden in plain sight, as it were. And it's just been discovered. Another finding about Venus is that the squishy outer shell may be resurfacing the planet even today. We've got here a background picture, which is a map by Arecibo. And here's the Magellan over where Magellan's done a deep scan. And they're looking at these features here and the way that they are apparently moving. And yeah, we're looking here 200 kilometers across here. And there's various features there that are being interpreted as being associated with recent volcanic activity. Now, phosphine, remember that finding about 2 years ago now? Phosphine on Venus means there must be life there, perhaps in the upper atmosphere. Well, in a paper published in October last year, the finding has been called into question. The team that published this paper performed far infrared spectroscopic observations of Venus using a receiver aboard the Sophia aircraft, the Stratospheric Airborne Observatory. And no phosphine. And okay, what evidence did they provide for that? Here it is. This is a spectrum of the atmosphere of Venus, lots of ozone there. But where you would expect phosphine, a dip here for phosphine, there isn't one. Over here, the different waveband, once again, dips expected for phosphine, not a sign. And yet there's lots of ozone being shown there. Moving on, here is what we'd expect at different concentrations. So up, say, 16 parts per billion, you'd get this line here, the bottom one. But you see, where you expect phosphine, no dips. We'd expect phosphine here, no dips. Likewise over here, no dips for phosphine. So if there is phosphine there, it's extremely tiny and doesn't back up the findings that were made a couple of years ago. So science moves on. Talking about findings, though, this is out at Enceladus. Do you remember that Cassini flew through one of the plumes from Enceladus? And they've been working the data, and just a few weeks ago, they announced that they'd found evidence for phosphorus on the material coming out of phosphorus. Now, remember, at school you learned about CHOMPs: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, for the essentials for life. Well, phosphorus, yeah, one of the essentials for life. So maybe there's life under the oceans of Enceladus. And here's some more of the data from that scientific paper showing the evidence for phosphorus. Right, moving on. Some pictures from the Webb, James Webb Space Telescope. And I'm not going to dwell on these. As I say, these were new when I put them in the show for earlier in April. But this is interesting. This is Uranus and the rings. Now, I can remember when Uranus didn't have rings, at least not that we knew it had rings. And here they are, quite clearly visible in the infrared of the James Webb Space Telescope. And just save me explaining it, we've got a polar cap, we've got some clouds, and there's even a faint ring here, the Zeta ring. All right. I can't remember what that one was about. Deep, sort of a deep field. All right. Titan, again, from the James Webb Space Telescope. Except that this one here, we're comparing the Keck, which is a ground-based observatory, and the Webb, and showing that you can see weather patterns on thing and penetrating a few places down to the ground. All right, move on. Now, the pillars of creation. Yes. The guy who first processed the Hubble ones, his wife, walking down the street with his wife pointed to a T-shirt and said, "Why don't I get any of the royalties from that?" Because it's such a famous picture. Anyway, look at that picture. What can you see in it? Well, let me introduce you to a concept that you've no doubt heard about. Pareidolia. Pareidolia. What does it mean? It means seeing things that aren't there. In other words, seeing faces, and, you know, like you look at the clouds and you can see a dragon or a dog or a person. So let's have a look. What do you see there? I call that the bat out of hell. Can you see the bat's eyes and the wings? And I can see a dog there. I think. Wait on, have I gone too far? Yep, yeah, that's a dog. Okay, I can see a dog there. I don't know if you can. See, eyes, nose, floppy ears. All right. And what can you see there? I see a princess in a wedding dress. See, there she is. There's the head. There's a shoulder. And this is the wedding dress. Okay. And this is Tinkerbell holding a baby. There's Tinkerbell. There's the baby. And there's a flowing dress. And you can see what you like in it, or you see nothing at all. It's up to you. Okay. And there's Yoda from Star Wars. All right, let's take a little tour.
The pillars of creation lie 6,500 light years away. This area is brimming with gas and dust, essential ingredients for star formation. A new near-infrared image from the Webb Space Telescope shows the scene in high definition. Glowing, bright red wavy lines appear at the edges of some pillars, revealing where stars are ejecting material as they form. The bright red orbs are newly formed stars that have burst into view. Distant galaxies typically make appearances in Webb's images, but not this one. A translucent layer of gas and dust is drawn like a curtain, allowing the stars to take center stage. Webb's near-infrared image of the pillars of creation will help researchers update their models of star formation. Over time, we'll learn how stars form and burst out of these dusty clouds over millions of years.
Now, moving on, this is Danuri. It has a NASA camera on it, which is called Shadow Cam, and it is able to image into dark craters using either reflected earth shine or the light reflected off another part of the crater. So let's have a look at a few of these images. That's earth shine, a crater seen in earth shine, otherwise dark. Obviously oversaturated over here, but this is what would otherwise be dark crater, and it's lit up by the light reflected off over here. So Shadow Cam is quite a good instrument. It's on the Korean spacecraft orbiting the moon. And even able to get some details like a boulder running down the hill, not in motion at the moment. Now, I remember first seeing these sorts of pictures with Lunar Orbiter way back in the 1960s. All right. Now, let's take a break from planetary science. Just a few quick pics you might not have seen of our favorite Australian astronaut, the only Australian astronaut flying under an Australian flag or a British flag, whichever one. And do you remember that? We had a talk about at the Space Association about this. Remember that? It's called a skin suit. And it was to, we've had Joe Kerwin talking about biomedical things. So there's Catherine Bennell-Pegg looking at the skin suit, which is on display in Cologne at the Astronaut Centre. a few pictures of her training or getting orientation. It would be a better word. Just in case, notice the Australian flag. Hey, we haven't had that before. There she is with the Australian flag on her shoulder. And you can find on the European Space Agency website the introduction to the astronauts. And she's one of the ones that was, if you watch the video, she's the one that's sitting in that chair right there. Although here she is up on the stage there at the end. Okay, and that's the skin suit again. Now, discover. Do you remember the days when there was a vice president who was very much into the environment and global warming and stuff like that? And he had this idea that if we had a satellite out in space, we'd all sit there watching it 24 hours a day. And they said, they built the spacecraft, then they had a change of government and they put it away. And then they said, oh, maybe we can use it after all. And so it is out in space now at the L1 point, 1.5 million, so yeah, 1.5 million kilometers from Earth towards the sun, looking back at the Earth. And so it sees the full disk of the Earth. And I could enlarge that up and show you more details, but I won't. And here is an eclipse happening in Antarctica. And we see the Earth rotating, like you'd see in the movies. All right, now we come to the Japanese one, Hakuto, that crashed. And it went into orbit quite successfully. It was there for quite a time, taking wonderful pictures, including, look here, Earthrise, but what do you see there? Well, let's enlarge it up a bit. This is the Exmouth eclipse earlier this year. And here's the eclipse. There's Australia, and there's the eclipse moving out this way across the thing. And Hakuto was in the right place to take a picture during the eclipse. Well, the landing was supposed to go like that, and it got, they had the radar misread the height, and the engine switched off and it crashed. Now, this is the impact site. And here you see before and after of the impact site, taken from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, I think. So it's sort of, made a bit of a mess. And this is the ratio image showing bits of debris and disturbed soil, and the actual main body of the craft crashed there. So a private enterprise still has yet to successfully land on the moon. That's the general area where the impact happened. Right, let's move on. Now, China has had a rover on Mars now for quite some time, and it has been doing some work, and also the orbiter has been doing some work as well. Let's move on quickly through this. Evidence that water has flowed on Mars at quite low latitudes. And again, that's where it's been from. It landed here. You can see the blast, that white areas up and down is the blast when it landed. And since then, it's traveled down there and has now for quite some time, not quite a year, been stuck because it came into winter. And then the solar panels got covered with dust. And that's probably the end of the mission. All right. Meanwhile, sorry? I can't hear you, sorry. Oh, you know, that thing has panels that can go up like that. So I don't know why the hell they just don't move the panels up, but once in a while let the dust fall off and put them back down again. But anyway, this is the Tianwen. Zhurong is the rover on the surface. Now, from orbit, Tianwen has been taking sufficient detail to make maps, and here's some of them and a few more. So this is all from Tianwen 1. And of course, I've named some of the nearby craters where it landed for reference, just like NASA does. All right. Hello. Meanwhile, the Emirates, the United Arab Emirates, has had a spacecraft called Hope in orbit around Mars, and it has completed some maps as well, including a nice little movie that I'm not going to show you. And these are some of the pictures from the Hope mission from the United Arab Emirates. All right. And InSight has officially finished its mission now, but the data still keeps coming out. And this is some of the findings from the InSight mission, and that is that it is able to detect from its position here some Earth movements, and here it shows the waves that go through. An SKS wave, by the way, means it goes through a pressure wave and then a shear wave, then a pressure wave, and then a shear wave from the site. So by analyzing that, they can work out that Mars has a core and a mantle, and the size of those cores and mantles and the densities. And that's compared in this scientific paper with the Earth and the Moon. So InSight's done some good stuff. TESS now, the TESS mission. This is to celebrate the 2nd year, or was it the 5th year? I can't remember now. And it shows the area that was scanned in order to find exoplanets. All right, move on. This is the Japanese Ryugu mission. just need to finish up with this last 35-second movie, finding about Jupiter. Jupiter has a auroral oval, and it turns out that due to global winds, the heating from that, the energy from that, gets distributed towards the equator. And that's based on data from Hubble and some ground-based measurements. Well, and yeah, we don't have time to do the biggest gamma ray burst ever seen. Now, I'm just going to finish up with just one little thing to give you an idea. It was observed by all these spacecraft. It was the biggest gamma ray burst ever observed. And these are some of the gamma ray bursts that have been discovered over the years. Notice the scale here keeps changing. And this burst happened in October last year. Well, you see those little things that don't even show. Those are the ones that we were getting excited about a few years ago. And then this one happened. Bang! What causes it? The formation of a black hole. So that, I've worn out my welcome. So got another hour to go, but
Okay, folks. That's it for the night. Thank you very much, Andrew, for that presentation. Fascinating as always. Thank you to Peter for the wonderful interview with Joe Kerwin. Just a reminder that our next meeting is scheduled for the 24th of July. And at this point, we'll be having a social event. Look out for emails and social media alerts. We'll let you know about the venue, and we'll also keep you up to date with future plans for the association. And yeah, if you have any thoughts or comments, please feel free to send them the way of your local committee member or to the association. So keep your eye on our website and on our social media, and you'll find out what's going on. So thanks very much for coming out, and that's the end of the meeting. Thank you. Bye.